Welcome back to the class ranking guide. This is where we're going to take every class and look at every single subclass and see how it fills the role of each of the 7 roles identified by the dungeon dudes, essentially a comprehensive list of what you could want in a party. By the end of the series, we're going to know how every subclass and every class stacks up, and because 5th edition is basically over in terms of new content, this will be the eternal definitive guide to all of these classes in 5e. The eternal definitive guide to all these classes in 5e. Today we're talking about the Bard. Let's get started. So the College of Creation has a bunch of fun bonuses to its Bardic Inspiration. Essentially, depending on what you use that Bardic Inspiration for, it has this little bonus additional effect. As a Bard, you were already using Bardic Inspiration on the party a lot, so this is really nice and plays really well into what the Bard was already excelling at, which is support. You're also going to get Performance of Creation, which will allow you to create basically any object that within a certain size, within a certain price limit. I have a real fondness for these abilities that let you just kind of like create whatever you want to create. It helps you to fill a variety of situations, and a really creative player can go really, really great places with this, especially since this Performance of Creation is repeatable, so you're able to potentially continue relying on it as your adventure continues. So animating performance is going to create a dancing item. This item is, I guess, essentially intended to be a combat feature. It creates like an extra little minion for you. The dancing item is extremely durable. It has a very high hit point total, fine AC, and it's got immutable form to help protect it from shape changing and anything like that. So this thing is going to stick around. In terms of the damage, it does force damage, which we love. A d10 plus your proficiency bonus. So for most tiers of play, this is going to end up being 7, 8, 9 damage on a hit. It gets a single hit, and then it's got this fun, irrepressible dance crowd control. This is going to slow down or speed up your choice, creatures that are around the dancing item. This is not so much like a beatdown creature or even frontline, although it is potentially soaking a lot of damage. This is more battlefield utility. This kind of dancing effect that you can rely on to stay on the battlefield because of its resiliency is going to allow you to slow down enemies and speed up allies. So it's really boosting utility, and it really shows this kind of like duality of utility, where I think that the Performance of Creation is going to help your out of combat utility. You're going to be able to solve a bunch of different problems by kind of creating whatever is needed. And then in combat, you're going to be able to have this really impressive effect on the battlefield. So I think we're looking at an A-tier utility Bard. At level 14, the Creative Crescendo is just going to really put a cherry on top of this utility Bard. It's going to allow you to create more than one item at once, up your Charisma modifier, which is really, really good. And then the gold cap on the type of item you can create is just gone. So really, really fantastic feature here. High level feature, but it's going to remove a lot of obstacles in the game just by being around and you being able to kind of like do whatever you need to do there. So an amazing capstone for that class, and cementing the A-tier utility. The College of Eloquence Bard, I'll tip my hand now, I consider to be one of the best classes in the game, and I hope to show you why. Right at 3rd level, we're getting Silver Tongue, which makes any Charisma Persuasion or Charisma Deception check that you roll, if you roll below a 10, you can count it as a 10. This is like the Rogue's Reliable Talent, but it comes online at 3rd level. Because you are a Charisma-based caster, and these are Charisma skills, and you get Expertise at 3rd level as well, if you so chose, right here at 3rd level, you could choose to never roll below an 18 on any persuasion or deception check. As you continue to level up, maxing out your charisma, increasing your proficiency, that is going to do nothing but skyrocket into the 20s, making this immediately the character you want negotiating. We're not talking A tier. We're talking higher. This feature, along with the ability that we're going to get to understand all languages and to be able to communicate with all sorts of sentient creatures, makes you an S tier negotiator. This is quite the feature at 3rd level, but we're not done. Unsettling words allows you to use your bardic inspiration to decrease an opponent's saving throw, their next saving throw. You do this as a bonus action as normal, which means you can absolutely unsettling words and then cast your own spell with your action. Typically speaking, when we talk about saving throws, spell save DCs tend to be much more bounded than ACs and attack rolls, right? Attack rolls tend to have this very wide range. Saving throws typically are trying to meet this exact like 13 to 19 range is exactly where you want to be. So being able to subtract your bardic inspiration, a d6, which will then become a d8 and a d10, is huge against a saving throw. That's more than likely going to make the difference between a save and a fail if they were going to succeed. So this is a hugely powerful ability. Depending on what spell you use it for, it can be fantastic utility, right? Because you're using your crowd control on big enemies to kind of make sure they stay out of the way. Or it could be decent beatdown if you have a saving throw spell that deals a lot of damage. There are fewer of that second category. I think it's certainly doable, making, I believe, utility an A tier. We're still just at 3rd level with the Eloquence Bard, and I want to talk about the potential for these abilities in terms of infiltration. Now, up until now and in the future, we will be discussing infiltration largely as remaining unseen or being kind of like unnoticeable, right? If you have a familiar, like a cat that goes into an enemy camp, that might be noticed, but no one's gonna like care about the cat. The thing the bard can do is talk their way in with deception. They can pretend to be the safety inspector. They can pretend to be the commanding officer. They can, weave all sorts of creative lies and then rely on this reliable deception check that they're going to continuously be able to bring in, making them able to be invited into the enemy camp. It's definitely a riskier play than some of these other abilities, but just given the reliability of the deception check here, I do have to give it an A in infiltration as well. So that's just 3rd level. We've upgraded 3 of our 7 categories, one of them to an S tier. The next thing we are going to get at 6th level, in addition to that universal speech ability that I mentioned, is unfailing inspiration. So if someone rolls an inspiration die and adds it to their ability, and they still fail the check or the attack roll or whatever else, they can keep the inspiration die and hold on to it and use it again in the future. You only expend it if it succeeds. This is very helpful. Obviously, we want our allies to be succeeding on these checks, and oftentimes they will, especially with our inspiration helping them. But this is going to increase the resiliency of your support. Lastly, at 14th level, we get infectious inspiration, which is going to pair beautifully with that 6th level unfailing inspiration. Infectious inspiration says that when you succeed using your bardic inspiration, that bardic inspiration jumps to another ally within 60 feet of you. It does cost your reaction, but now once you put a bardic inspiration die out onto the battlefield, it's likely to last the whole combat, either being held by the person who failed or you're helping it bounce around to those who succeed. Reaction abilities are really great because although you do have great reaction spells in your arsenal, most of the time your reaction is not going to be used. So being able to continuously keep that inspiration circulating is going to be very, very helpful to your team. Okay, Glamour. So at 3rd level, we are getting Mantle of Inspiration. This is going to give you the ability to expend bardic inspiration, so you are taking away from that support ability, but you are choosing a number of creatures within 60 feet of you, and they can move their movement speed. Very good tactical positioning. I love throwing the Glamour Bard on builds. I think it's particularly fun for kind of newer players to have this like Nova moment where you're helping everyone out. It feels much more fulfilling as a support character. It does lose a little bit of its potency depending on the situation that you're in, and certainly it's not something that you want to generally be doing regularly and using up your bardic inspiration. They also get temporary hit points, which is very, very helpful, especially mid-combat perhaps. If there's some positioning change that's needed, it can help re-bolster their hit points. You're also going to get enthralling performance. You can spend a minute essentially attempting to charm everyone around you with your enthralling performance, and it has some very specific rules for the way in which those participants react. They essentially love your performance, think you're fantastic, and will protect you if people are trying to come and get you, which is really, really helpful. My experience is that this is situationally useful crowd control, so I'm going to throw it into the utility bucket, and it is a little bit hard to use, so we're not going to squeeze out of our B tier utility just yet. At 6th level, we get Mantle of Majesty, which is going to give us the ability, most importantly, to cast command as a bonus action without expending a spell slot. So we can just, every turn, command, command, command. That's our bonus action. Really, really good at weaponizing your bonus action, doing some basic crowd control on enemies. This really is lending itself to a bard that wants to max their charisma so they can get that spell save as high as possible. And I'm going to catalog that as utility as well, bumping us from a B to an A tier in utility. Unbreakable Majesty is a little bit disappointing as a high-level feature. What it essentially is going to do is give you kind of a sanctuary-esque protection. Someone attacks you, they have to make a charisma saving throw or attack someone else. So it's not really defending anyone, it's just kind of protecting you. Situationally useful, and I don't think it counts towards any of our categories. College of Lore. We're getting some bonus proficiencies, 3 of them, so if you want to be the skill monkey, this is absolutely the subclass for you. We're also going to get Cutting Words. We can use our reaction to expend a bardic inspiration, subtract it from their roll, whether it's an attack roll, ability check, or saving throw. That flexibility is really, really good for us, and using that reaction, very, very helpful. I would say that this ability is good. It's going to burn through your bardic inspiration really quickly though, right? So maybe it detracts a little bit from your support capacity. The primary feature that everyone talks about when it comes to the lore bard is additional magical secrets. Magical secrets coming along at 6th level where you can choose any 2 spells of your choice. This gives you the ability to really grab some fantastic spells off of like the wizard spell list or the cleric spell list, allowing you to customize your spell selections to whatever's really needed. This is extremely useful, but especially so at higher levels. So I think that between this Magical Secrets and the next Magical Secrets, along with Cutting Words providing some utility on the battlefield and your excellent skill abilities, I'm going to say this bumps up to an A tier in utility. Level 14 Peerless Skill is actually a little disappointing for a high level feature. You essentially can use Bardic Inspiration on yourself for your ability checks after you have seen the roll of the dice. So I guess more strategically able to use it when it is needed. You do recover Bardic Inspiration on a short rest, so you have a high chance of being able to use these Bardic Inspirations more often outside of combat. I just don't think this is particularly good. We will keep ourselves at a high A tier for utility. That's more or less what we're able to bring to the party here. Spirits Bard. Oh, Spirits Bard. First, we're going to get Guidance automatically. Guidance is a very good cantrip, so that is good. Our Spiritual Focus is going to allow us to add a D6 to either a damage or a healing roll of a spell that we use with our spellcasting focus. This is presumably always going to be an option to us, and it's on par with other features that add your ability modifier. I think, if your ability modifier is 4, the long run average of like a D6 is 3.5. This is very consistently available for us to use at 6th level and onwards. Our big feature here is the Tales from Beyond. What we can do with this is we use our bonus action and expend a Bardic Inspiration as normal, but instead of giving it to an ally, we are rolling on the Tales from Beyond table. We then get a story that has a mechanical benefit to us, and we choose to hold on to that story and then use an action to activate the effect. So, for instance, Tale of Beloved Friends, a target and another creature of its choice within 5 feet of it gains temporary hit points equal to a roll of your bardic inspiration and your charisma modifier. Boom, boom, temporary hit points go out, and you are doing an action to do that. And you've already used a bonus action and a bardic inspiration. So the good part about this is all of these tales are good, and they get better the higher your bardic inspiration roll is. So there are some rolls in the 10, 11, 12 category that aren't even available until later levels when your bardic inspiration die gets bigger. But these could be potentially quite powerful effects for your bardic inspiration. Bad part is, again, you're rolling on the table. So whatever the situation is that would be perfect for that particular tale, it's unlikely to be the situation that you're in. So you're stuck either re-rolling on the table to try and get something that you need, which relatively low probability. It's actually more consistent in the beginning, right? Because you've got this wider range, including better possibilities towards the end. So you're exchanging this consistency for this like swinginess. It's difficult to assign this anything in terms of how it impacts. I would want to see like the long run impact numerically of these stories in a campaign. But without that data, I'm going to say this holds us in our A tier support. Most of these are support abilities. A couple of them are utility or control, but that utility is only useful if you get to apply the effect when that situation occurs. And since you're at the mercy of the dice, I don't think that it's fair to give us points. Spirit Session is going to allow you to conduct an hour-long ritual to learn a spell of your choice. This can be from any class, so it's like a magical secret, but it does go away after a while, and you need a whole group of people to access the spell. I really like this feature. I think it's actually better than Magical Secrets. It's fantastically versatile. The main restriction is the spell must be in the divination or necromancy schools. That does cut a lot of spells down, but I think there are a lot of divination spells that you feel bad about taking on your learned spell list because you're only going to want them like once or twice to answer like a very specific question. And now you can get that from Spirit Session. That's really, really nifty. It makes me want to bump things like Investigator, because you can choose, maybe to grab like a detection spell or even just divination and ask a question. I'm going to say, though, that because this is focused on, this is kind of a larger bracket of like being able to solve a given problem by using this feature, I think this is an excellent utility bump. So I am going to go ahead and say that the Spirits Bard is an A tier utility as well, just from this feature alone. 14th level Magical Connection is basically just going to give us advantage on our roll on the spirit table, so we can more consistently get this tale that we want. By this point, our Bardic Inspiration is a D10, and it's about to be a D12, so we've got access to the full table. So it reduces that swinginess a little bit, but again, you're still going to end up kind of having to make do with whatever tale you end up getting, even with advantage. Oh, the Swords Bard. I love the Swords Bard, but I cannot claim that it is particularly excelling at any of these roles. We've got additional proficiencies, including medium armor and the scimitar, and then we can use it as a spellcasting focus for our bard spells, which is nifty. We are getting a fighting style, either dueling, which is pretty good, or two-weapon fighting, which is pretty bad, and then we get blade flourishes. We can use a Bardic Inspiration to deal extra damage when we hit, and then do something else. Either boost our AC with Defensive Flourish, push the target and then move with Mobile Flourish, or do extra damage with Slashing Flourish. This is going to consume our Bardic Inspiration, so it's hurting us in the support area. And we do have a problem here. When we evaluated the Bard for Beatdown, we were specifically talking about choosing spells that would deal a lot of damage. So the idea being that we were a powerful full spellcaster that could do damage spells, and in that way we could steer ourselves towards a high damage character. But the Swords Bard is now trying to be a damage dealer in this new melee way. So we have to kind of start from scratch, right? We're not starting from a B. We're starting from a C tier in damage. and we have to ask, how far does an extra bardic inspiration of damage, maybe 4 times a day, do? And it doesn't do great. It doesn't do great, and it's very limited in the types of options you have available. You're either dueling, but no shield proficiency, or you're 2-weapon fighting, which is kind of an underpowered damage type. So I have to say, like right now, the Swords Bard is still sitting at like, I guess, a B tier in damage because it can still just throw all that out and cast spells. You do get extra attack at 6th level. That is the only Swords Bard feature, which does increase your damage, but like compared to a fighter or a barbarian or a ranger or anyone else, it's not great. You've got this full spell casting and you're not using it because you need your actions to attack. Finally, at 14th level, your Master's Flourish is going to restore a little bit of balance to the class. This is going to allow you, instead of using a Bardic Inspiration die, to just use a D6. Your Bardic Inspirations, of course, by this point are D10s. They're about to be D12s. So you've been adding some extra damage onto your hits, and certainly with like Slashing Flourish on a D10, that's maybe 10 extra damage that you're getting from those. But now you are resetting your damage to your 3rd level state, and you can use your Bardic Inspirations again and be more supporty at 14th level. So this is pretty terrible, all things considered. So if you imagine that you are always using Bardic Inspirations, then you should probably lose some support classification. And if you imagine that you are never using Bardic Inspirations for your Blade Flourishes and always getting them out, then you are firmly bottom of B tier for damage. So this actually does not change our rankings at all. The entire subclass is kind of negligible across all 7. College of Valor. Bonus proficiencies in medium armor, shields, and martial weapons, all of them. So already we're off to a much better start than the Swords Bard was. We're also going to get Combat Inspiration, which basically allows you to either add your Bardic Inspiration to the damage of an attack, or add it to your AC against an attack. So essentially like a little shield spell of your Bardic Inspiration. Long run average of a Bardic Inspiration D6 is 3.5, so 3 or 4. Very comparable to like a parry ability, which is really good. I think that's quite good. It's good support to be able to do that. I think it's better than rolling that damage for sure. So I think everyone who has a Valor Bard in the party should be saving that Bardic Inspiration to spare themselves some damage. But it's good. Our only 6th level feature in Valor is also extra attack. So we have to ask ourselves, how well are we doing in this melee Bard capacity? Certainly we're using our bonus action to give out these Bardic Inspirations, these Combat Inspirations, but we don't really have anything that we're doing. I guess you are now multiple ability score dependent because you need your dexterity to be making these weapon attacks. You've got a shield and medium armor, so I guess we can say that you're like a B tier frontliner, but you're not giving yourself an AC boost with this Bardic Inspiration. Overall, I think this is still just treading water, and we're done with the low-level subclass features. So this is the subclass, right? 14th level, I do love this feature a lot. Battle Magic allows you to, when you cast a spell with your action, to make a bonus action attack, which is nice. Like, don't get me wrong, it's nice. Really weaponizes the bonus action. We're now consistently able to use that, but not to make an extra attack, right, which was our 6th level feature. So we throw out our 6th level feature in order to cast spells, which we could already be doing, all for this bonus action attack with, a one-handed weapon or something to that effect. So it's not great in terms of damage. I'm going to say it's still B tier. It's not great in terms of frontlining. I think that does move up to a B tier. It's not great. It's not that much better support, right? Because your Bardic Inspiration is being used in a different way, which is nice, but it's not adding anything on to that Bardic Inspiration, right? You're using it instead of other ways. So yeah, I think Valor's not really contributing a lot here either. Oh, Whispers. Well, let's get into it. So Whispers is going to give you Psychic Blades. This deals additional psychic damage when you hit a creature with a weapon attack. So once again, we are in this bard using weapons mindset. I don't know why Wizards keeps making these subclasses, but the extra damage is equal to 2d6 right at this level, and then it actually does scale to 3d6 at 5th level and 5d6 at 10th level, and then even further than that at 15th. So this is actually quite comparable to Rogue Sneak Attack. It's the same damage dice. It's pretty close to the same number of damage dice, and it's psychic damage instead of the weapon damage. So pretty unlikely to be resisted, which is really nice. And you don't have as many restrictions on it as Sneak Attack. So I think this is better than Rogue Sneak Attack, just in terms of reference. The subclass that people say is like the most disappointing for Bard is better than the Rogue, just as a class. There's that. We're also going to get Words of Terror, which is another pretty difficult ability to use. If you spend a minute talking to a creature, you basically frighten them. They're terrified of you. They think that you're going to divulge some great secret of theirs, and you can kind of use this to bully someone into like confessing something or into doing something for you. It's a negotiation skill, but it is very difficult. It's a bit of a loose cannon. You've got to get someone alone for a minute, which is tough. I don't think this is going to increase our negotiator status in any way. Mantle of Whispers is legitimately cool. It allows you to assume a humanoid's form if they die next to you, and you use your reaction to like grab their shadow. Very metal, very cool. You also get a little bit of like information from them, so you can like pass and like answer basic questions as if you were them. So this kind of like memories of their past is mechanically represented by a +5 to deception checks to act like them against insight rolls. This is, I think, another really great infiltration feature. I really think that this rivals some of the best, like coming up with this crazy story and talking your way into, the enemy's encampment. So I'm going to give this an A tier in infiltration for this ability. I think this is quite good. Now, what everyone says is, how are you supposed to get someone to die in front of you within 30 feet? And my answer to that is, you kill them. You be the one to kill them. That easy. Problem solved. I feel in practice, I feel like this is absolutely what this ability is for. It doesn't make you be the one that kills them, but like you're 100% killing that person and then pretending to be them, wearing their shadow. Love it. 14th level, we get kind of another like working on those Words of Terror is Shadow Lore. This essentially, instead of frightening a creature, will charm them for the next 8 hours, unless someone attacks it or it gets damaged or anything like that. This is helpful. Having a little thrall for 8 hours is helpful. If you need to negotiate with someone, if you like need a shop owner to hand over their goods, if you need a guard to look the other way, or even like go in and like raise the portcullis or something like that, it's very good. It's nothing that spells that you would already have access to can't do. Pretty well within the like charm person kind of realm. So overall, I'm just going to say that this Negotiator is still an A because you're still a bard, and I think these features are kind of like ribbon utility features. I'm also going to say that your damage potential doesn't reach an A tier because you don't get extra attack, so your Psychic Blades or whatever doesn't keep reoccurring, and the Psychic Blades damage just isn't enough to keep up with real martial damage dealers. Maybe if you're consistently using that bonus action for some sort of damage spell, like you grab Spiritual Weapon with your Magical Secrets, but it's still so hard. You're still reaching, right, to be able to do this. It's not easy. So I think that's what a B tier is. And those are the bards. The Bard base class is one of the best base classes in the game when you look at the 7 roles. Full spellcasters are always going to do great. Charisma full spellcasters are always going to do great. Charisma full spellcasters with expertise, it's just the Bard, and that is fantastic. So in addition to that, they've got some genuinely amazing subclasses, making the Bard, you know, a favorite for veterans and just an absolutely wrecking the leaderboard right now in terms of their power.